Okay, it's about 7 o'clock, and first thing I want to do is thank everybody for coming tonight. My name is Mike Funk, and I am the superintendent of the Albert Lea Area School District. I've just got a brief statement I want to make tonight before we get into the agenda and what that's about. Plamo's death has been tragic. It has caused much soul-searching internally for members of our district and has been a traumatic event for our wider community. Questions are being asked publicly about what the district does regarding emotional supports. Some folks are asking about bullying. Tonight, we hope to provide some information on what we do as a district to support our students and what our caring staff does on a daily basis to meet the needs of all of our students. As a school system, are we perfect in this area? No, we are not. That is why, for a good portion of tonight's evening, we have set aside some time for individuals to share with us their ideas and concerns on how we best can serve our students. Tonight, at the conclusion of the district remarks, we'll be seeking respectful, candid feedback from community members as our programming, and we're going to do it at different levels. Depending on the crowd, we may split between elementary and secondary, is I think what we're looking at this point, because our programming is different based upon the age of the student. So we might have the secondary folks stay here and the elementary ones go out to the commons. At the end of this evening, we will have provided you some information on what we do as a school district, and I hope you can provide us opportunities for improvement as we take this first step to work together to improve our students' school experience. So with me tonight, I have a number of principals in the school district at various levels, and they are going to be very curious and open to hear what people are thinking about what's going on with our school district on this key issue of student management and emotional support. So for the agenda this evening, we're going to have a district overview of what where we've gone over the last few years with the social and emotional issues that we have faced as a school district. I've been here, this is my 10th year now, and I would say in the last 5, we have put a considerable amount of focus in the area of not only meeting our academic needs of our students, but our social and emotional needs as well. We're also going to tell you a little bit about how we develop our staff, and then we're going to have a number of our principals, Tanya Franks, Chris Dibble, and Mark Grossklaus, come up and talk specifically about what they do in their buildings. We have some handouts, I think, that we passed out on suicide prevention, and then we're going to split up to have a community dialogue to listen to concerns and discuss potential ways ahead. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Niebor, who's kind of leading the staff development for us in the district.
Thank you, Dr. Funk, and thank you, community members, for coming tonight. I'm Kathy Niebor. I've been in Albert Lea Area Schools for 32 years as a teacher at all different levels, high school, middle school, dean, elementary, media specialist, and then I now work at the district office. My work is with grades 6 through 12, Southwest Middle School, Albert Lea High School, and our ALC, and I support the work of the principals, who then, and also the work of the teachers when it comes to teaching and learning. I work with Mary Jo Dorman, who also, we really are partner roles. She works in the elementary, and I work at the secondary. And we work together with our principals on hiring staff. We work with them on programming, and I want to talk a little bit about that to begin with. So if we think about what kind of staffing we have in our district to help students with social emotional needs in particular, we are in year 2 of elementary counselors, and Tanya Franks is going to talk a little bit about that. And she's going to talk about what their role is, because it's different in the elementary than it is at the secondary. Secondary counselors primarily are academic focused, although they do also work with students in their social emotional needs as well. In the elementary, it looks very different. It's very much that more educational role when it comes to counseling services. So she'll be talking about that. We've had school social workers in the district, I want to say about 15, 20 years. I see Katie and Kim back there. About 15 years, 20, 25, okay? Okay. So school social workers primarily work with students on an IEP, so they have special needs, but they also work with other students. And when they work with students who are on an IEP, those students have needs for social emotional skills. So they work one-on-one, they work small group, and we have school social workers K-12. 6-7, we have 2 school social workers for about 525 students, and we have a counselor who comes from Riverland ALC to the Southwest ALC program, Kim Danner. And she has an interesting background. She worked at the high school for many years. She also worked in a role as a school social worker, and now she does school counseling. At the high school, we have 2.5 school social workers, 3 school counselors, and 2 deans. And you can see when those positions were added. Our ALC is 9-12. It really goes to age 21. And that's something that's been around since about the mid to late 80s. 4 years ago, Dr. Funk, and when I was at the ALC, we talked about the need for a counselor, and Kim Danner provides support at the ALC, and then she also travels to Southwest for some support there. In early childhood, we have a 0.5 school social worker. We also have school psychologists, school nurses. We have 3 licensed school nurses, and then we have some LPNs that support individual students and individual needs throughout the district. We also have something that is really modeled after what Austin School District does, and those are success coaches. And Mary Jo Dorman is really in charge of the Achievement Integration Grant for this school district. And through that, we are able to hire in each building Korean and Spanish speaking adults. They're not licensed teachers, but they push into classrooms as what we call a success coach. They receive some training. We have 5 Korean success coaches now, and how many Spanish, and 5 Spanish-speaking success coaches. So those are throughout the district. They also provide translator services, and the work they do depends on the needs of the building, and they really are there to support at-risk students. They don't necessarily just work with Korean and Spanish-speaking students. They can work with all students, but that primarily is who they work with. We also are in a unique situation that we partnered with Austin Public Schools for a special education cooperative where we share some very students with high-level needs in a school that is out of Austin Public Schools, but it's a partnership. So how are school staff trained on suicide prevention, bully prevention, and emotional well-being? That's kind of the crux of the meeting tonight. So every 5 years, our teachers have to be relicensed. And in their college careers, they may or may not have any in-depth training on suicide prevention or bullying prevention. All of our teachers, as they go through their college prep careers, probably receive some general psychology courses and some possibly adolescent psychology courses in elementary or secondary. But the legislature has noted over the years there are things that teachers like myself, for instance, who've been out of college since 1984 for my undergrad degree, that wasn't part of our training. So how do we keep everybody in the loop, and how do we provide ongoing training for teachers who may not have received some newer information as they move on in their career? So every year, probably the last 12 years, the legislature has added some statutory requirements. So one is PBIS, or Positive Behavior Intervention Strategies. In Albert Lea area schools, you're going to hear about responsive classroom, developmental designs, and top 20. And that's 3 of the methods that we use in Albert Lea area schools. Accommodation, modification, and adaptation of curriculum materials. As we push more and more students into the mainstream, as they're able to handle for some of our students who have special needs. Some of our regular ed classroom teachers need some training possibly on how to accommodate for those students or how to modify for those students. So there's training in that area. Key warning signs for early onset mental illness in children and adolescents. That's how it's defined in the law, and that came to be about 5 years ago. So in the education world, we were introduced to this concept of what are key warning signs for early onset mental illness. Under that statute, in 2016, the legislature said, in addition to that, you must provide some suicide prevention best practices. So I have that highlighted in yellow because for us in education, suicide prevention comes under the statute for early onset mental illness. They're tied together. But you have to have training in both of those areas. Now the question will be how much training that is. Well, probably never enough. But it is something that our teachers have to have some in-service on, either offered by us as the district, which I'll talk about in a second, or they can go out and seek their own individual training, which some of our teachers do. Every teacher has to receive some reading preparation, technology, and then in 2015, more and more of our schools had the opportunity to have more and more English learners, so all teachers have some exposure on how to work with our English language learners. So some of that is job embedded. We try to offer probably every 3 years a rotation, and there now is a new one being added this next year on cultural competence, which we'll be working on as a school district and all school districts in the state. So that's where the direct language from the statute comes for requiring training. So what we did on October 12, 2017, we worked with Kara Bennett through NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and we brought in Kay King. She was a NAMI presenter, and we had about 95% of our licensed staff attend that training. It was after school. Other staff may have attended other training, but this is our training that we offered, and it was called Question, Persuade, Refer, and it really spent some time talking with staff on myths and facts, things to look for, clues, and then each of them received some written information and then follow up in their buildings. So was it as in-depth training maybe as my school social workers have? No. But it was an awareness training and something that we're going to continue with. Way down at the bottom, you'll see that it says Princeton High School, Hazelden Postvention Resources. So many of the administrators have gone to some suicide prevention workshops as part of their professional organizations as well. And Mark Grossclass, high school principal, attended one, and it was put together by Princeton High School, who over the course of several years had experienced about 6 different student deaths for a variety of reasons, suicide being one of them. So they put together some resources for their community, and our response to our young student this last week was based on those resources. They were well vetted, we felt. They really aligned with the toolkit for high schools on suicide postvention. And as Dr. Funk said, unfortunately, we maybe don't deal with this each and every day as a postvention for suicide, but we tried to use some really good resources from a Minnesota school who has dealt with this issue. So what are the next steps? We're going to review the NAMI training in all of our schools. We've talked about is it time to not just review the handouts, but maybe bring in Kay King again to work with staff. Last spring, we were contacted by an organization called NoBully.org. They saw an article in the Albert Lea Tribune where Dr. Funk was talking at a school board meeting about bullying, and it's not really possible to legislate it away, that we really have to do more. And a woman by the name of Lynn Seifert from NoBully.org contacted him and subsequently I reached out to her, at his direction, and they offered us a grant to come in and do some training for nobully.org. And so prior to school beginning this year, all of our 6th through 12th grade teachers at Southwest, the high school, and the ALC received 5 hours of training. 2 hours were with some smaller teams, and then 3 hours with the staff. We've done a little bit of follow-up with that, and we're going to continue to do follow-up that. As part of the grant, Jennifer set up, she'll be coming in and working with our teachers again on November 1st and 2nd, but she also will be doing a parent presentation. So there's a handout in the back, and we have a slide a little bit later on how to bully-proof your kid. And this is from a partnership with, as I said, ESPN and Major League Baseball. I talked with her for about 45, 50 minutes, Mark and I and Mary Jo on Friday, about how that should look, given what's happened in our community this last week. And she had some really good suggestions for us. So I encourage you as parents, if you have a middle school or a high schooler, it is not intended for students, it is intended for parents. Jennifer, I think if you talk with any of our middle school or high school teachers, was an excellent presenter, trying to give high school teachers the skills to intervene when they see an incident happening. And this will be aimed at how to give our students skills to stand up to and deal with the issues of bullying. The flyer on that was intended to go out last Wednesday. It just really did not seem appropriate. So we've held it off for a week and introducing it to parents tonight. And then you'll see that on social media. And if you have a middle school or high school student, you might also get a school reach message on that. But there is flyers in the back. You're going to hear about some of our curricular resources in the elementary. We're talking, one of the things we'll be talking with Jennifer Brevoort from nobully.org is anonymous reporting. We heard some comments about that in the last couple of days, and what does that look like? What does anonymous reporting look like? And that's something that nobully.org does work with school districts on, if that's something that we want to investigate or that the community thinks is important to investigate. Other avenues, staffing in the school district. We have a really strong partnership with the county.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was looking at the school calendar today, and actually it says that with the anonymous bullying, that there's supposed to be a report that's done every time someone does reporting of bullying.
That is true.
And so the option of whether the school district would like to investigate or not, isn't there a specific case law to what you guys are supposed to follow when people report bullying?
Correct. So yes, there is a bullying protocol. We have a policy that came out of our harassment policy that is modeled in Minnesota School Board Association. So what I'm talking about is a little different. When I talk about anonymous reporting, I'm talking about if a student wants to report an incident or a parent would like to report that anonymously. That's different than our requirements for reporting to the Minnesota Department of Education. Correct.
No, I'm sorry, in the calendar again, there's a specific grievance print in the calendar, which says that anytime a child or a parent reports it, whether it's to a teacher or the principal, whether it's verbally, they can ask it to be done written, or a principal is responsible for converting that verbal report into paper and turning it over to the district office as a receipt.
Sure, that's true. So yes, so we have an internal procedure for collecting complaints and reports of religious, racial, and sexual harassment and bullying. And I'm glad you saw that because I developed that report 20 years ago. We still use the same report. Those are confidential reports. And then in addition, if it rises to the legal definition of bullying, that gets reported to the Department of Ed. So you are correct. Thank you. So these are, we have a strong partnership with the county on attendance, truancy, child neglect, I sit on the ATOD committee with Freeborn County Partners in Prevention. I see Lana Howe here, who works with SHIP, formerly with Partners in Prevention, Blue Zones. We have some very strong parent-teacher organizations. I think you'll hear a little bit from Mr. Dibble this year if you have a student at Southwest, and Ms. Sievertson about the parent organization at Southwest, trying to rebuild that organization. We also work with Crime Victims Crisis Center and the Department of Health. A couple of years ago, Tanya Franks was able to implement a program called My Life, My Choices at the ALC for both male and female students. So parent and community meetings, that's why we're here tonight. Partnerships with local ministerial groups and Youth for Christ. We've been involved in conversations with those groups. We also have done some training on ACEs, which is Adverse Childhood Experiences and Trauma-Informed Schools. So I'm going to turn it over to Tanya Franks, and she is going to talk about the elementary.
Thank you, Kathy. As Kathy said, my name is Tanya Franks. I am principal at Halverson Elementary. I have been in the district for 15 years. Prior to being at Halverson, I was the administrator at the ALC for 3 years. And prior to that, I was at Lakeview Elementary. And my experience at Lakeview Elementary was as a special education teacher, both in a learning center setting and as a self-contained emotional behavioral disorders in a level 3 program. So as I'm talking about these pieces of social emotional learning, my educational experiences have been about these very things. They're things that I address every day in my role as an administrator, but they're things I was very passionate about as a teacher as well. So in the elementary school, one of the things that Kathy had mentioned already earlier is that we use an approach called responsive classroom programming. Responsive classroom is known nationwide. It really looks at 4 pillars. And those 4 pillars don't focus just on academics in the classroom. Those are academics. But you'll notice the word engaging. And so it's really important for us to make sure that, yes, our students are receiving the instruction in their standards, but that they're engaging in it in a meaningful way. And so responsive classroom practices make sure that we are reaching our students with engaging academics. The second pillar of responsive classroom is positive community. That happens in a variety of ways in our classrooms. Sometimes there's a misconception that building a positive community is only about morning meeting. Morning meeting is a very, very small portion of what happens every day in our classrooms. Morning meeting happens every day in all of our elementary classrooms, K-5. It has a variety of components, including news and announcements. It has a component of a greeting, where we are greeting all of our students and our teachers and our paras and our social workers and our counselors. Every single person that's in that classroom is a part of that community. And so that's a part of it as well. Greeting, sharing is a part of it, where sometimes it's a daily topic, where it's one thing that the whole class is sharing about. Sometimes it might be 1 or 2 students that get to share for that day, but sharing is always a component. News and announcements are always a component. And then another piece that's always a component is an activity. Yep.
But her sharing program is amazing. I got the opportunity to do it twice in our block.
Yeah.
You got to know me and I got to know them.
Thank you. No, and I understand your concern, and I think our purpose here tonight absolutely is to share the components that we put in place to help support some of those things that are happening in the classrooms. Then we look at effective management in our classrooms and developmental awareness. So making sure that we're meeting our students' needs that are in a developmentally appropriate way. The use of responsive classroom, research shows that if if we are using that approach in our classrooms, it will help us lead to higher academic achievement in math, reading. The hope is, as you mentioned, sir, as well, an improved school climate. So we want to make sure that we're implementing those pieces with integrity so that we can improve our school climates. That's our goal every single day, in every single classroom, in every hallway, in every cafeteria. That's our goal. Then I have one quick little, Mr. Halverson, I got it. Now where? This is just going to,
improves academic achievement, decreases discipline problems, and leads to more high quality.
okay.
Every child deserves a warm, safe, and joyful learning environment, a place that supports them to take risks, to learn, and reach their full potential. That's the core principle of Responsive Classroom, which is now used in classrooms and schools across the country. Responsive Classroom is not a separate curriculum. Instead, it's an approach to teaching. It offers educators practices that they can use throughout the day to expand children's learning and create positive communities, both in the classroom and throughout the school. Responsive classroom techniques don't end at the classroom door. They can be used to build a positive school culture as well. 2 major studies concluded that the responsive classroom approach increases student engagement, improves academic achievement, decreases discipline problems, and leads to more high-quality teaching.
Responsive Classroom has helped me to become a better teacher, because I think it's totally changed my approach to how I interact with them.
I noticed a change in my effectiveness as a teacher with morning meeting and with Responsive Classroom as a whole.
My favorite thing about the Responsive Classroom is that it works. I've seen it work as a classroom teacher. I've also seen it work as a building principal.
Everyone is invested in what we're doing for kids, and that's the power of school-wide Responsive Classroom.
So that's just a quick little snippet to show you what some of those things look like in the classroom in terms of students engaging with each other in different learning environments. The biggest part of this in an elementary is that elementary teachers can make an immediate difference. They're in the classrooms with those students every single day. They're on the playgrounds with those students. And so they can have a long-term impact on students' lives. And it's important for us to make sure that that impact is positive. So know that we are working with our teachers to help them build strong and safe classroom communities that can go beyond the classroom, that can go onto the playground, that can go onto buses, that can go into the community at the bus stop, that can happen in your own front yards while they're playing with their neighbors. We also want our teachers to be able to help notice and help those small mean behaviors. We talk about small problems not becoming big problems. And so helping our teachers help students with that conflict resolution. Working on pro-social skills for students so that they can stand up for themselves, so that they know the right way to report, and those pieces as well. Also working with families and collaborating with our colleagues so that we can strengthen the impact of how we're meeting each student's needs. Kathy mentioned that last year we added school counselors to our elementaries. Every elementary has a full-time school counselor. With our school counselors, we also adopted the second step, excuse me for tripping on my words, second step, social emotional learning curriculum. Second step is a program that, again, helps us address the social emotional skills to help our students thrive in classrooms and in life. The second, our school counselors in all of our elementaries last year, they came into our classrooms and taught the second step curriculum every other week. As an elementary administrative staff, we really discussed what are our needs? What does our building say? What does our data say? What does our disciplinary report say? And really looked at the impact we were making and what more could we do. We talk about that all the time. What more can we do? And so last year we decided we need to get our school counselors in classrooms every week. And so now, rather than every other week, our school counselors are visiting classrooms every week. So I see Mrs. Talamonte sitting here today. She has Miss Fry, who's also sitting back there. She comes in every morning once a week from 8:30 to 9:10 and does a second step lesson with those fourth graders. And they're doing that in every classroom K-5. In all 4 elementary buildings. So that was a way that we responded to the needs that we were seeing in our buildings to make sure that we were addressing these pieces in our classrooms. When the counselors come in, the next 5 bullets, that's really what the curriculum addresses. It's helping the students gain confidence, setting goals, decision-making skills, being able to collaborate with others in work and play, and then being able to effectively navigate their world. So those are all the pieces that second step curriculum hits. When we do breakouts, Ms. Fry has brought handouts and examples also of those specific areas, and we can share them with you if you are at the elementary breakout as well. I already addressed that they're coming weekly. They're addressing those social emotional needs like problem solving, empathy. Bullying prevention is what comes under the empathy topic. So that is hit during every empathy lesson. And then October is bullying awareness as well. So not only are we hitting it each time we have an empathy lesson, but in October, that's a piece that we're addressing regularly as well in our classrooms, not just with our school counselors, but our teachers too. Our teachers are addressing it. And then they work on calming down strategies and being able to express our emotions appropriately. In addition to the counselors, there are also additional resources for the teachers. So when the school counselors leave the classroom each lesson, they leave behind a link for the teachers to be able to follow up throughout the week until their next lesson. So they're using the same language, they're using the same strategies, and they're able to consistently address student needs that way. And then parents as well, there's a home link for families to support lessons taught in the classroom as well. And counselors, those home links are going home regularly, right? I see 2 of you nodding. Yeah, 3, okay. So there's a parent piece as well. I know that this topic that we're discussing tonight, it's heavy on our hearts, it's heavy on our minds. I get it. But you'll notice up here I put counselor, teachers, parents. This is a school issue, absolutely. But it's a school issue, it's a community issue, it's a family issue, it's a church issue, it's a global issue. So this is about all of us as a community meeting our students' needs. So know that there's pieces that we all can do to help support our students. Yes, sir.
So far, I don't know if anybody else has gotten this, but this sounds like it's just, okay. I was bullied in school, my wife was bullied in school, my daughter was bullied in school. This sounds like, oh, well, we'll teach the bullied kids how to calm down and all that. All this is not going to the bullied parent's house, so the bullied parents teach respect and all this stuff. We know, we've been there. This is not teaching the parents of the bullies to teach respect at home.
I can hear your frustration.
It's a bunch of bull.
I hear your frustration, and I know that I can understand that feeling, because there is a feeling of where do those other parents come into play? Where does other members of the community come into play? I would love to say that we had control over that. What we can work with in our schools is our students. And the biggest part of that with our students is helping give them the skills, not just the child that's bullied, but all students, the skills to be successful in a variety of settings. I want to let you know that we're sharing those resources with all families, regardless of if we are the bullied, the bystander, or the word we used with our students this week is being an upstander, the person that stands up to someone. And we can provide those resources, but we can't guarantee that that's going to happen. And that's unfortunate. But that piece is out of our control.
My daughter, when she was in Hawthorne School, one year, I can't remember what year it was, but she was bullied on the bus, she was bullied on the playground, she was bullied in the classroom. She went to the bus driver, she went to the teacher, she went to the principal. Nothing happened. Luckily, in Girl Scouts, she took self-defense, and that's the only way she could defend herself, because nobody would show her any help. I don't think that's right. I told her, I said, if you have to, do it yourself, because nobody else is going to listen to you.
Yes, ma'am.
We did. We did. We talked to them.
Not talk to them. When you want that complaint filed, you demand a letter be put in your child's file as well as a letter for your own copy.
Because we
Every
know what
time
it's
a
like.
child reports, every time a parent reports, it is the school's responsibility to fill out this report and assign that separate investigator with the district for him, they are required to investigate. And I think the school may need additional resources to build their
Yep.
team.
And that's,
Those investigations, but there is a paper trail that you can build, and then you bring it to whoever you need to in order to stand up for your
Yeah,
child.
because I know how you're,
Because I hate to see you so upset having gone through being bullied, but there's a way you can take it.
and when we're, can I stop you for just a second, sir? If we can we'll finish going through our information, and then I know Mr. Grossklaus and Mr. Dibble have some more information to share. If we have additional concerns about that, there is a lot of individuals here that we can continue to problem solve and share those pieces when we're in a breakout so that we can get through our information.
my experience when I was little. I got dragged across the cement. And
Yep.
my knees are bad because of that. If you have never been bullied, you do not understand what it's like. No matter what education you have, you're not going to understand until you've been there.
I'm going to finish with my information. I have one last one here. In addition to that, we have school social workers in every building. Our school social workers work with all students. Again, a misconception is that they only work with special ed students. They don't. They work, part of their percentage of their day is with general education students, and a percentage of their day is with special education students. These are just an example of some of the topics they cover. They cover a wide range of topics, but it is based on each individual student's needs. So to list all of those pieces here would be slides. So a few of the main ones that we highlighted were conflict resolution, anger management, anxiety, coping strategies, self-calming strategies, and friendship skills. And again, we'll have our school social workers are here as well this evening, so when we do our breakouts, if we have specific questions for them as well about their roles in the school districts, we can reach out to them as well. And next is Mr. Dibble from the middle school.
Thanks, Tanya. Chris Dibble. I am the first year principal at Southwest Middle School here. I'm in my third year in Albert Lea. I taught the previous 15 years in Faribault and the previous 4 years before that. And I started my career down in Alden Conger, just down the road. And let me tell you that, yes, this is a problem everywhere. And it's being addressed as best we can. And this training have been in place, and we are really ramping it up to make it happen. Our developmental designs is something that we do every day in our advisories. Our developmental designs program at the middle level is a continuation of the responsive classroom that they do at the elementary and builds off the skills that we give these students in the elementary. Our advisory teachers are trained to support 6th and 7th grade students. It's a tough time in life, the way your brain is maturing and the way everything is happening. Very few people, when you ask them, hey, what do you want to go back to? They say 6th grade, man. Okay? It's a tough time to be a kid. And every one of our staff members in our school know to look for these issues that these students are having. And I hate to hear the stories about the kid that gets bullied and we aren't able to help them. When we find out something and our staff knows, it comes to our attention and we deal with it. You may not be able to know that. The same as if your kid was causing the issue, we're not going to go back and tell the community that your kid's causing a problem. But we are dealing with the problem. But we can't share that information publicly with you because that's classified information, that's confidential, that's stuff that you and your kid need to work through. But I want you to know that when something gets reported to us, we do take it seriously and we do the best we can to get to that situation. And part of this is this developmental designs where we've now trained every one of our staff members to look and develop relationships with these kids so we know when they're struggling and we know that we can reach them where they are. The no bully training that Kathy told you about is going on now. It started with all of us in this room, 6th grade through 12th, plus the ALC the week before school started. We got on stage and we acted out. I mean, sometimes it's tough as an adult even to be able to say, but now we have it down. Mr. Grossklaus, we don't do that at Southwest. We work with each other, we work with kids, and we work with other staff to make sure that when we see behaviors happening that aren't acceptable, that it stops. Next week, we're going to be training our school social workers on something called a solution team, where you actually pull the people together that are having the issues, talk about what's going on, and see where the real problems lie, because there is a solution to it, but we can't solve the problems we don't know about. So I invite people to keep letting us know where the problems are, and we can do our best to get there. In terms of social emotional programming at the middle level, we started a kindness challenge just this week with our staff that our 2 school social workers have been working on. And we're going to start with empathy training, and Walk a Mile in My Shoes is the first project we're going to do. This is being led through our advisory program once again, where our staff members have those relationships built with our kids so they are able to address situations that with an adult. Because when you make that adult-student relationship and you make it meaningful in the classroom, it's a lot easier to learn and it's a lot easier to move forward, and that's what we're looking for. In terms of middle school resources, all of our staff are trained in the no bully prevention, in the developmental designs, and now in the social emotional programming. And I look forward to talking to our parents who are here tonight. And with that, I can pass on to Mark.
Good evening. My name is Mark Grossklaus. I'm privileged to be the high school principal here at Albert Lea High School for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I was a principal in St. Paul, and prior to that, I have over 15 years of secondary education in the middle school and high school level. I'm going to talk briefly about what we do at the high school to prepare our staff to help our students. The number one thing we need to do is build relationships with students, because I get students, 1,300 roughly of them every day, that come from different environments, single family parents, divorced parents. I had a student the other day telling me their father can't come home because the mother won't allow them because they're using drugs. So we deal with a lot of things. So we work on building relationships with students. That's why we're here. Teachers care about kids. They wouldn't do it. They're not doing it for the money. They care about kids. They want to make a difference in their lives. And I know teachers are affected by what happens. We are privileged enough to have 3 social or guidance counselors. You'll see their names up there. Each student has the opportunity to meet with them. It's not just for what are you doing after high school. Students can go to them, talk to them about things going on either in school, at home. They provide resources to the students and look to connect them with outside resources. They are not trained to be a psychiatrist or do that type of work, but they can help the students find those resources in the community through Freeborn County and other resources that are out there. We have 3 social workers, you've heard this before, that work specifically with our students that have individual educational plans, or special ed students, to help them through that too. All these people next week, as you've heard, will be working with the no bullying training and be those solution coaches to work with kids. Since arriving here, we've been privileged enough to add support staff on the administrative side. So we have a dean of students that works with our 8th and 12th graders. The reason we pick 8th and 12th grade for that person is they have a lot more contact with 8th graders because they're coming from a middle school setting and need more support than generally our seniors do. And so I would suspect our dean sees way more 8th graders during the day than they do seniors. We also have an administrative dean that works with the 9th through 11th graders on different things. We're lucky enough to have Ted Herman, our school resource officer, available for students. So if students have concerns from the community, they can reach out to Officer Herman, and he's in our building and can talk about those. And we have a great relationship with Amy Geyer. She does a lot with truancy, but she also does a lot with students on outside issues. And so she works with us, with our deans, on how can we provide supports to those students. So that's kind of our structure in our high school. What we've done to help staff, because you look at me, my background, yes, I worked in the inner city school, but I'm a suburban kid growing up. So we've tried to educate our staff on different things that they might not have experienced over the years. So this is just a list of different things we've done with our staff. We've brought these people in to work with us. Jody Farr was here the first year I came. She woke up our staff, works in inner city Minneapolis with disadvantaged families, and talked to us about why certain things happen. That student's not being disrespectful to you. That's where they come from, and you need to work to meet them and understand where they're coming from. And so that was very valuable. Jeff Halverson, my assistant principal, and I have known Tom Cody for at least 10 years now. Tom Cody's known throughout the United States. He works with the Minnesota State High School League, works with a lot of other groups about how do we treat each other. And it's called Top 20 Training. And so how do we work? What are star qualities of people? How do we work with students and staff on that? And we've had Mr. Cody in a couple times. We've also looked at, last year with Danielle Thies, is the trauma our kids go through. Our kids and kids all over go through a lot of trauma. So how do you work with those students? A student comes up to me and starts screaming at me. It's usually not because Mark Grosclose is a you-know-what. There's something going on. There's something. We had a young lady earlier this year who was screaming at me. I was like, I don't know why you're screaming. There's a lot going on. Once I was able to sit down with the student, build that rapport with the student, that student and mother told us the student had been through a lot of things. That provides us information that we can help support the student. So Danielle did a great job of helping us with that. We talked ACEs, okay? You can go online and take an ACEs test yourself. You just type in ACEs training and you go on in Google and do that. And you can find out the things that have affected you through life and how that affects your perspective on things. You'll be amazed, you know, some things such as divorce, drugs, different things like that affect students, and bullying, and how that affects their perspective and how we can work with them. And then, as Kathy and many people have mentioned, the no bullying training that we're doing, we did before school. We have 2 sessions coming up November 1st and 2nd. One is to work with our building leadership, including teachers, different groups of people. And then the other one is to work with our social solution connection group to work with how do we deal with when that bullying comes. It's reported, we deal with it, but then how do we work with those students in the building? Because they're coming back to our building. You know, people think, well, Grosclose can just kick them out and they're going to go away. They have an educational right to their education, so we have to work with them. So how do we work with students so that they can be successful, not only here, but in the community? So those are some of the training things we've done with our staff. Some of the things we've done with students. I want to say it's 3 years ago, Jeff. Help me with that number. 3 years or 4 years? Okay, 4 years ago, the school board and Dr. Funk supported us on bringing the academy model to our high school. We work with our 8th and 9th graders. We look at breaking it into a smaller group. And so those students, based on some academic and can be some other issues, are brought into a smaller group where we can give them more individualized attention. They also have the same 3 teachers, which is unique in the high school. So their English, science, and social studies teachers are all the same, so it's more of a team concept on the middle school concept. So that's that. The top 20 course we work with our 8th graders on. How do we go about treating each other? What does that look like? How do you react to someone? What do conversations? So that's a quarter course. Our kids do a lot of great work here. We have a lot of great kids in our school, and one of the groups that we have is our link crew. And so if you've had an 8th grader go through our school, there are juniors and seniors that meet with them before school, and then they meet with them quarterly, and they can meet with them anytime, but they guarantee quarterly meetings where they talk about, hey, how's high school going, academically, socially, getting them involved in different groups. So we have that there. And so our link group leaders just met with our 8th graders a couple weeks ago. And then more recently, our National Honor Society students are making sure no one eats alone. And so they're going up to students, sitting down with them, having a conversation. Some of our students would rather eat by themselves. We respect that because it's a quiet time. But they also include them in groups so that people aren't feeling lonely out there. So those are some of the things we're doing with our students above and beyond the normal building relationships. You've heard all 3 principals. Kathy Niebor talked about this. So on Thursday, November 1st, people are coming in. This is sponsored by Major League Baseball, talking about no bullying. And this is for parents and guardians. It'll be at Southwest Middle School in the Little Theater, and it starts at 7 o'clock. You will be getting, if you are a parent, a teacher, you'll be getting information on this. It'll come both electronically via email and also by School Reach Voice, letting you know. So it's really hard to hand things out to high school kids. They usually don't get home. And so we try to reach out to parents via those ways. We'll also put it on the high school website, so more updates and more reminders of things coming up. So we're going to switch this up a little bit because we know people have questions, they have concerns, they have comments, and we want to hear that. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep the secondary. So if you're interested in the middle school, high school, we're going to have you stay in here. If you're more interested in talking about the elementary things, we're going to have you go out to the commons.